It is Wednesday, which means it's time to catch up with Dylan Butler, our friend from MLSsoccer.com and OSDB Sports. So Dylan, Georgi Mihailovic, I'm not going to waste any time. The world kind of just picked up speed and went to 78 RPM for you this morning.
Yeah, I mean, we heard the rumors on Saturday about his potential move to Holland, and it became official today. First thought is, look, it's he's always wanted to go to Europe. I think it's a league that is good for attacking players. So, I think it fits his profile well. He's in the best form of his career. Obviously, we remember, he was in consideration or talks for the MVP before he got injured. That injury also resulted in him not joining the U.S. national team. So I think it's a good move for him. And I think the fact that it isn't for now and it is for January is obviously huge for Montreal, right? Because they are probably the team least talked about that has the best chance to do something special. That they're, in the East, obviously all the conversation is Philly and even NYCFC after their drop of form. But I feel like Montreal is just kind of sitting back there and just not having anyone talk about them, which is probably fine for them, right? So with Georgie at the helm and steering the ship, I think they've got an excellent chance to have a special postseason.
And at the same time, Stade Saputo is one of those places that is a certifiable pain in the you-know-what for anybody that goes to play there. And I think it's going to be one of the tougher tasks for anybody in this postseason is to try to get a win and knock CF Montreal out if you're at Stade Saputo.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because it's not the glitziest stadium, right? Like it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of all the new ones that are popping up all around. It's not particularly large, either, but it just has that something, right? Like it has that atmosphere, especially I think among their supporters. They've got the bell going, which you hate hearing told.
Yes.
If you're a visiting team, right?
Absolutely.
You're like, how many times is that going to toll? Like it's like 13 times now or whatever it is. But yeah, listen, it's a unique environment and a great setup for them. It works really well, right in that former Olympic grounds, right next to the big stadium there,
next to the broken Big O. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, can Montreal do it? Like I'm still not sold on their goalkeeping, right? And I feel like you need to have that guy. Look at what NYCFC did last year, right? Like they knew Sean Johnson would make the big save. Like he didn't have to make a lot of them, but he did make the big ones. He made big PK saves. I don't know if Montreal has that, to be honest. Like I think they're pretty solid throughout. I like them throughout every other part of the field. I'm just a little concerned with their goalkeeping.
So what else broke that was causing your fingers to have to work massively overtime this week?
No, just a Matt Doyle column that came in and about his awards, who he thinks is up for awards. What else did we have this morning? Well, I guess it broke yesterday, but Yaya Toure from the Colorado version of Yaya Toure, out for the year. Howard Webb is departing pro after 2020. So just a couple of things this morning.
Do you think, and I know that this is probably wishful thinking on my part, do you think we will ever get to a point to where we will have increased accountability when it comes to officiating and more transparency when it comes to the decision-making process? Because it seems a lot of the time that you have inconsistent refs and they can't get out of their own way, and it causes problems. It causes problems enough during the regular season, but if it causes a problem in the postseason, it's like you get an oopsie and a news dump, or you have to have a a reporter who is assigned to ask the question the right way.
I've done that.
So you know what that's like. Do you think now that we could possibly have a position of more accountability when it comes to pro and officiating and inconsistencies and all that kind of stuff? Or it was just wishful thinking on my part?
No, I don't think it's wishful thinking. I think if there's a league in the world that you'll get it first, I think it'll be MLS. So like I don't think we'll see that necessarily pop up in the Premier League or in La Liga, or elsewhere. So I think this league has the best shot at that. Will it happen sooner than later? I don't know, right? Like it's I think you're I guess it's like any other labor type situation. You're dealing with unions and you're dealing with negotiations. So I think a lot has to happen, but it is. I'll join you in your crusade. It is for the betterment of the sport, for sure. So I think and I think there's enough smart people in MLS to recognize that as well. It's just a matter, I think, of just getting those negotiations and figuring out the exact sort of way to do that, right? Like, I guess how to make the sausage, right? Like, there's different ways to do it, but what's the best way for us as a league, as pro, as an organization? So I think you just got to get those people in a room and hash that out.
Because, I mean, right now, I think it's safe to say that MLS is a top 12 league internationally. I think that's a safe bet. But I think if you want to be taken even more seriously, especially as a World Cup is coming to this hemisphere, you have to make these kinds of, I'm not going to say change, but I'll say you should want to make these kinds of adjustments to sit there and have folks want to watch your product and enjoy watching your product instead of sitting there and going, okay, well, that was inconsistent. Okay, well, that went one way and I thought it should have gone another way. Okay, well, that should have, instead of having more questions as you watch, I would think, and like I said, this might be me and logic, I don't know, but I would think that you would want to have these kinds of changes to the positive, especially as more eyeballs will be on you in a very short period of time.
I'm not in disagreement. And I think, again, I think there's enough decision makers who agree with that that we'll see some sort of a change or an adjustment. I don't know if it's going to be full scale that I'm sure not everyone's going to be happy, but I think there'll be enough changes. I think that you'll recognize, certainly before the World Cup comes here.
Because, I mean, I know that we're probably not going to get the XFLian version of listening into VAR, inside the VAR studio. We're not going to get that live as much as I would like to where you have the discussion between center ref and your VAR and going over all of the topics and things like that. It's like, okay, what do you?
I think Australian rules football does that too, right?
Yeah, they do, and a guilty pleasure. As we're now in the round of 8, heading toward a grand final. I'm up on Friday nights and Saturday nights watching those kinds of things. I don't think we necessarily get to that point like we had with the XFL and the AFL, but I think that there should be at least something less head banging up against the wall, where if you're that beat writer and you've got to ask the question the right way, and you've got to get your semantics. I mean, you have to get you've got to get your sentence structure perfect. You've got to get an English major, I think, to make sure that the question is phrased properly to get something other than a boilerplate answer, which then continues the cycle of, okay, well, I didn't get the answer I was looking for, but you're done. You can't ask again. It's like the one and done. I'd like to think that you'd want to have that kind of accountability and show that your officiating crew understands the gravity of what's going on.
Yeah, the way that it is now, and certainly when I last did it, you're right. Like you have to write out the question. You have to stand outside the officials' locker room. You've got to hand them the sheet of paper. They close the door. It is written up by somebody. It doesn't say who, but it's written up. And then you get it back. You do have the opportunity to read it over and and write a follow-up, but they don't have to respond to the follow-up.
Right.
So again, those are all like the little semantics about it, which I think could, look, have the official come out to the beat reporter and go back and forth for a minute or two, right? I think that right there solves that whole issue of what you're writing, what's written back, like the ability to follow up right in person. I think those are things that I think would certainly do a world of good.
Before we get into games and other things, one other thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on is from Stej Colin-Tenorio over at The Athletic yesterday, where Major League Soccer apparently, allegedly, probably, maybe sometime very soon, set to loosen their rules governing the movement of youth and academy players. The youth system, the new system based around a protected list of youth players. MLS teams allowed to place up to 54 players on a youth player protected list, 45 in their academy, 9 who aren't in the academy but who live in the footprint. And I know that that's just kind of scratching the surface, but what did you think about this new idea that may be coming to the fore here?
I think the second part of that is interesting, especially around these parts, right? Because there are portions of the New York, New Jersey map that the Red Bulls and NYCFC share. And in fact, if you go then deeper into Jersey, there's parts of, like, by Philly Red Bulls that they share, right? So how do you protect those guys, right? Like, are you just the first to jump on them and say you're not necessarily part of our academy, but we're going to protect you? Like that. I think that is interesting. I think that could be a cause for some problems, because what if, again, just spitballing off the top of my head here, but what if, I don't know, Red Bulls protect a kid in Montclair, New Jersey, but they don't have him on their academy. NYCFC want him on the academy. Like, that's a problem.
Then you sign the kid to the academy deal and you bring him out from underneath the other guy.
Right.
I guess. Well, and I mean, all right. So let's think of the territories where this could be an issue. Tri-state, Florida, Texas, California, off the top of my head, those 4 areas, because
California, especially with two LA teams, for sure.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, down the freeway, it's them, So it's like you're fighting. It's the I-5 fight now, and trying to figure out what you want to do with all of these kids. It's an interesting idea on that aspect. And then for the clubs that don't really have that deep of an academy presence, are they just going to sit there and it's like, okay, we only have like the 9 names, and since we really don't have an academy-ish kind of a deal, or what have you?
I think it'll push them to have to go that route, right? Yeah. To have to invest in their academy. Like, I don't think there's too many teams in MLS that don't have that pipeline. Like, one that I could think of right away, and we've talked about it before in the show, I think is like Minnesota. They could have a better one. Maybe this is one of those that forces them into doing that. But I want to say, and apologies, because I don't have it right in front of me. But I want to say it's something like around here. I want to say it's like a 50-mile radius. But again, 50 miles between like where the Red Bulls train and NYCFC train isn't a lot, right? Like, there's a lot of what is it when you mix blue and red? What is like a purple?
Yeah, it's like an indigo.
Yeah, so it's not red or blue. It's just sort of the combination between the two of them, and it's a lot of it's a lot of. That's why a lot of these clubs now, they've around here, certainly they've got these satellite clubs, right? So you hook up with them, and then you've got an into that club. It's really interesting, but to fast forward from that, I mean, look at what we see now with, how important are academies? Well, just look at what we just saw with Leeds United, right, on Sunday, where a Philly homegrown, a Red Bull homegrown, a guy that NYCFC was trying to say was a homegrown because he played for I think it was Manhattan before he got picked number 1 overall by NYCFC, all came up, right, through various academies, youth teams in the United States. So I think the value has never been higher for MLS academies, and as such, it is a business, and you're a club doing yourself a disservice if you don't heavily invest in it. That's for sure.
And you mentioned the fact of I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, where you have these individuals in these geographic footprints where you could have teams fighting over them. Okay, hey, what's it worth to you?
Right.
You drive up your own value and go to the highest bidder, because as the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, said in the WWE, everyone's got a price.
That is true. That is true.
All right. The week that was, and before we go screaming into the weekend that will be, and we do have Friday Night Football this week. Just some of the greatest hits. Philly put 6 on DC. DC is in a world of hurt right now. CF Montreal put 4 on the Revs. Minnesota over Austin 2-1. Inter Miami held Toronto, so it was the under at 3 to a 2-1 win there. Quakes and LAFC they just went bonkers on that one, and 2-1 there. Just, it's like, okay, we don't know what to expect with any teams in California anymore. Cali Classico's just out the door. NYC puts 2 on Chicago. Orlando beats Charlotte. Sporting Kansas City has found their offense over the last couple of matches, and they put 4 on the floor against Portland at home. And Nashville beats Dallas by putting 4 on the board. Nashville chose offense for a change. Some of the greatest hits for you from the weekend that was.
And they won at home, right? Yeah. I got this.
Who is this Nashville team that we're talking about?
Yeah. Here? No, I would say a general overview for me, and I don't know. I mean, look, MLS is so fickle. We could be saying something completely different come the end of this match week, but I feel like it was the first time, at least for me, that I feel like we've seen, even if it's not point value, I feel at least we've seen some separation in terms of the table, right? Like, not that I thought DC was going to do anything, but we know that they're dead and buried, right?
Uh-huh.
I kind of feel like Sporting's win over Portland, even though if you look at the table, they're only 1 point behind the line. I think it kills them, which is amazing to think, again, because they were just in the MLS Cup a year ago. But I don't. You can't lose to a team that is dead, a team that you just beat 7-2 a few weeks ago, and turn around and lose the way that you do. So that's a bad loss again to me, that I think knocks them out. In the East, Montreal and there's a clear separation, I think, even and you can see it in the table from the top 4 to below that. But even at the very top, like Philly, is the team. We know that, right? They are going to be the top seed. Montreal looks very much like the second seed, and then it's below that. But I think also like a New England, like I don't see them, climbing up from the bottom. Toronto, I think that's a loss that kills them as well.
Yeah,
they had a lot of teams to leapfrog, and they've got 5 points now behind the line. I don't think that they do that. So I think there's still going to be a lot of jockeying for position, and obviously statistically, and those teams aren't dead yet, but it just felt like that a little bit from those results.
Yep, and you've got NYC, who'd lost 3 in a row before they won over the weekend. I still have questions about NYC because they're not the same team.
Sure.
Then you've got that 4-point gap with Red Bulls. Then it's another 5 to that grouping that's 6 points separating 5 from 13, some with matches in hand. And I think that's going to be the fun part in the East, is all of the jockeying and the pole vaulting there. And then you've got 3, 6, 7 teams separated by 6 points, but only 2 separating playoffs from 3, 5 teams separated by 2 points to get into that last playoff spot in the West. And so that will be your Palace intrigue for this week. But as we look at another weekend that lends itself to match compression, because you have weekend midweek, you're looking at Friday Night Football, LAFC at Austin. I think that one's going to be at Donnybrook.
Yeah.
Cascadia, Seattle at Portland. Once again, we know what that one is, but you've got
Desperation.
That's a desperation bowl. You've got, and I'm scanning just to kind
Hell
of.
is real. You got that's and it's probably the biggest hell is real game for the same reasons, right? Where Columbus is just above the line, Cincinnati's just below the line. So,
Yep, you've got that one. You've got New Look Sporting hosting San Jose, Dallas, and Real Salt Lake. Nashville has to travel to the end of the planet to take on Vancouver. Then you've got Atlanta United, obviously must win because in the midweek they have to go to Chester to take on Philadelphia after that. Then Orlando City, NYC, and the Revs in LAG. What sticks out?
yeah, I think the not beer sponsored rivalry games I think are big because again, it's not just the rivalry, right? Like I will always watch a Sounders Timbers game. Like I don't care what it is. It just has that feel of it being a massive event, right? But when you put in the fact that both are below the table this late in the season, it just makes it that much more intriguing to watch for me, the neutral, and that much more important for the clubs. The same, like I said, the same is true of Columbus and Cincinnati. In my recent piece for OSDB Sports.com, which dropped on Monday.
Excellent plug, icely done.
I put out like 5 big questions and predictions, right, going forward. The 5th big question I had was what underdog can make the best MLS Cup run? And I have Columbus in that, right? Because I just feel like they've got like that great tandem of Zelarayan and Cucho Hernandez.
Yeah.
Cucho is red hot right away, and he doesn't like he was in his preseason, right? So like he's got a lot of miles left in the tank for him. You've got a Darlington Nagbe again, who just is that maestro in the midfield. You've got Pedro Santos and Eloy Room. You've got guys who have been in these big games, who have won MLS Cup just a couple of years ago. So I feel like, and they're in really good form. I mean, Minnesota on the other side are probably the hottest or one of the hottest teams in the league. But I just feel like there's something about this Columbus team now that they got Cucho in, right? They needed that number 9. They thought they had it in Jossie. They thought they had it in Miguel Berry, but now they absolutely have it, right, in Cucho. And I think it just changes everything for them. So, but they've got to make the postseason to do that, right? So right now they're only 1 point above the line. They're in really good form, but they need to get that win against Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is literally 1 point right behind them. So they've been a fun story this year, probably exceeding expectations, right? In year 1 of the latest rebuilds of FC Cincinnati with Albright and Noonan in there. I don't know if I certainly didn't expect them to be in contention. They were the wooden spoon winners the last couple of years. So that's a great story too for them. But yeah, like I said, my kind of bold prediction was, of all the underdogs out there, I think Columbus could have the best run there.
Could a second-year team that is currently in second place be considered an underdog?
No. I think because of their body of work, right? Like they go to LAFC and they get a result this year, so they could potentially go unbeaten against the Supporter Shield winners, right? In the regular season. So while it's a great story, and really, what is it? Was Atlanta second year that they won it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been done in recent history. It hasn't happened a lot, but I think I don't think you can't really consider them like, I mean, obviously odds makers will have them at some level of an underdog, but they're not an underdog. I think, I think in the West, you could say like, actually anyone below them, to be honest, but below those two, I think would be an underdog.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Minnesota, and I was right there with you on that one. RSL at home is always a tough place to play, and we know what Pablo Mastroeni will do come playoff time. It might be a difficult watch, but that don't matter.
The dark arts.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like, look, it's the postseason. It is survive and advance, and if you muck it up and you uglify it, but you end up with the Duke at the end of the day, like RSL did a lot in the playoffs last year.
That's all that matters.
That is all that matters. Nashville, if they can find their offense, other than Honey Mukhtar offense, I think that's probably the issue for me with Nashville. And then LAG, they could get lightning in a bottle with all the folks that they have offensively. As long as you keep Douglas Costa away and Cabral away from the offense, then I think that you've got a shot there. But no, I think that there's a case that can be made right now, 3 through 7 in the West, where you could sit there and say, yes, if Dallas gets hot with their personnel. Yes, Minnesota, we've seen what they can do offensively. Yes, RSL, because of what we've seen from them in the postseason. Yes, Nashville, if they find a second score. LAG, because of the firepower they have. So, yeah, you can make a case for everybody under LAFC and Austin. And for me, I'm not sold on LAFC because we've seen in the past, if you out-physical them and get them frustrated, you knock them off their pins, they're not the same team. And we've seen them get eliminated in the postseason for things like that. And especially if, with the, week left we have in the window, if you end up moving both Sifu and Fall on, your load management idea may not have as much management to it because of those absences at the back and in the midfield.
And then there's just a simple, weird reality that the Shield winner, right, rarely goes on and win. Not only doesn't win MLS Cup, but they get knocked out early, right? Like we've seen that the last couple of years. So that's the other aspect of it. So I think it does lend itself to, let's say, like a Minnesota, right? Like that had their struggles for a while and then they just sort of worked their way through it and now they're in really good form. Dallas, with the moves that they've made within the league, first with Areola, and now with Leggett, I think that really suits them well, and they can make their push with a guy in Ferreira who's still battling for the Golden Boot. So still not completely sold on them either, goalkeeping wise, right? Like I think goalkeeping is huge in the postseason, but that's where an Austin comes in. That's where even Minnesota, you could argue, even though Dane St. Clair's had some inconsistencies in the second half of the season. It's almost a shame that New England's not going to make it, I think, because you could make the argument they've got the best goalkeeper in MLS right now, even though he doesn't have the same number of minutes as the others, right? I think Petrovic has been phenomenal for them, and again, you're replacing the best goalkeeper in the league, which is never easy, and I think that they've not lost a step at all with him. It's just, I think everything else around them is not very good.
All right. So what's your viewing habits for the weekend starting with Friday Night Football?
Well, that's a must view for sure. I'm not like it's funny. Like I always have like kind of two screens going. Sometimes I'll throw the phone in there as well as a third. So I'm always all over the place. Like I think I will get a piece of every match, to be honest. But like I said to you before, those rivalry matches I think are really interesting. Right off the top of my head, I love the Friday night match. I love these last couple of weeks now, right, where you get the Friday Night Football and you got LA, Seattle, which was that wild 3-3 draw. This one should be a terrific one as well. So I like the idea of having that match in there as well. But you've got, you like look at Miami Red Bull, right? That could be an interesting one as well. Chicago Montreal a little bit, where Montreal, right? They've got to make sure they continue to have the points that they get. You mentioned Dallas RSL. I like that match as well. Yeah, I think Sunday isn't as great, right? Atlanta, DC, like you said, Atlanta's got to get those points. Orlando, NYCFC, kind of expansion sisters years ago, but don't love that one. And New England, LA as well, right? Like, I don't know. Like, so for me, I think your watch is Friday night, Saturday, and a little bit of a hangover, I think, on Sunday.
At Dylan_Butler at MLSsoccer.com and OSDB Sports. Dylan, as always, thanks for hanging out with us in the midweek, and may the news calm down, but not calm down, if that makes any sense. We always want news. We always want breaking news.
Yeah.
We don't want it all at once.
Yes,
it needs to kind of pace itself out. As always, my friend, thanks for hanging out in the midweek. We will catch up with you once again next week as we have previews for, I think, 5 games for the last day of the month. It's going to be an interesting finish for the month of August. Thanks for hanging out, my friend.
All right, bud.
Go get lunch.
I wish.
You wish?